Week 7 draft party here on the Fantasy Life YouTube channel. I'm Peter Overzet, and I will be your draft Sherpa for the next hour. We are going to hop in the underdog lobbies, drafts from Battle Royale teams, talk strategy, game environment, stacks, all of our favorite angles here. For this Week 7 slate, we can bust out the randomizer wheel as well, put some fun prompts on there, and dictate how we draft in a few of these. And let's get to it. How's everybody doing in the chat this morning? We got Pat Moore hanging out. Pat's been on a heater in the underdog Battle Royale streets. I'm getting very excited for this slate. I've been taking my lumps through 5 weeks, through 6 weeks. Haven't had a big score yet or any significant sweats, but feeling good about the process, tightening things up, and ready for a big week here. Let me screen share. Get my window up here. I need some ideas from you guys for some prompts I should add to the wheel. I had to like clear my cache on my browsers. Normally when I log in, the ones I didn't use last week are still here. So we got to start from scratch this week. If you guys have any ideas. One I thought was take top ADP value first 3 rounds and then see what we can do from there. That's kind of an homage to the team that won in week 6 was an uber ADP value team where they had an incredibly unique combo of JSN, Jacobs, and George Pickens all on the same team. So we can do some value hounding there. You know, we can, I think just putting like a few different types of builds on here could be fun. You know, like running back start, wide receiver start, QB tight end last 2 rounds, QB first 3 rounds or first 2 rounds maybe. Could do something like that. Any other suggestions? I'm happy to put them on there. Yeah, secondary team stack. That's a good one. You know, this one, it's kind of an interesting week. And it's funny you say that, Pat, because I was kind of looking through just the totals this week and kind of which games, in which teams I would be interested in secondary team stacks. And we can head over here and look at some of these totals. I think the Chiefs are a really good one to do a secondary team stack because we know they don't have to get pushed necessarily by the Raiders the way they're playing right now. I think you could have, you know, a running back. I'm kind of warming up to Pacheco. His utilization score has really increased the past few weeks. But I think you could do like Pacheco and Rice, Pacheco and Worthy. I think you could even do, you know, some stuff where if you played an elite quarterback like Jaden Daniels and wanted to do Kelsey and Pacheco, you know, I think there's some different kind of combinations of 2-player stuff you could do with the Chiefs. And I'm kind of looking for other teams that have big team totals. When I'm looking for those secondary stacks. Let me go to over under here. A few of the other ones that have big team totals, the Packers have a pretty big one. I feel like you can always do like a Jacobs Craft or a Jacobs wide receiver with them. Obviously, this Cowboys Commanders game, I mean, I think you can stack this up every which way. 44.5 point total here, which I believe is the biggest we've had on the main slate all year. So this is definitely a game you can get into from a game stack perspective. I think Saints Bears, I could see it a little bit. Like I think you could do something like DeAndre Swift and Rome Odunze. I think they're going to be pretty concentrated this week. We'll see what's going on with DJ Moore. But there just isn't a lot on the Bears from a battle royale perspective, despite really liking this spot. It's basically Caleb, DeAndre Swift, and Rome Odunze right now. The tight end stuff's a little wonky. If DJ Moore's out, I could see getting to Luther Burden a little bit. But yeah, I think we have to be kind of picky and choosy with which teams we go with multiple stuff. And yeah, Dan saying a stack. I think a Nick Sutton stack is good. I was kind of piggybacking off of what Pat was saying as far as a secondary team stack, which I would qualify as any teammates that don't involve the quarterback. So say you have a classic stack like Mahomes and Rice, where else would be a secondary stack you'd go to, and kind of figuring out which teams I actually think could support those scores. Because what you're really saying in the battle royale, tight end position, you're going to probably need at least 15. From the wide receiver position, you're probably going to need at least 20 points. That's just generally the amount of scoring. Obviously, it's slate dependent. So then you have to ask yourself, and say with running back, you probably need 25 points. So you're saying if I do a running back tight end pairing, which team can support 25 points from the running back, 15 from the tight end? Which team could support 25 from the running back and 20 from the wide receiver? Because the issue you run into in these battle royales is because you're having to get perfection to win the $50,000 at the top, is these high-end outcomes for a running back and wide receiver can be negatively correlated. If I'm trying to think of a good example, but Rico Dowdle's a really good example. Like Rico Dowdle goes nuts last week for 30 points. Even Tedaroya McMillan scoring 2 touchdowns, he only scores 16 points. The volume wasn't really there. And so Rico's massive domination of the targets or just of the overall workload for the Panthers made it so Tedaroya couldn't reach his ceiling. And so we really need to be picky, I think, if we're going to load up on 2 players from the same team that don't involve the quarterback, because we all know the quarterback wide receiver stacks are always in play. But yes, GM Big Dan, what's up, draft board? Let's go ahead and draft a team here. Let's do one regular to start. We'll just do one regular without, my little wheel and gimmicks, get a little lay of the land here, talk some stuff through, and then we can maybe start spinning the wheel and get into some funkier builds. I got the 1-4 here in this first draft. I would say this week there's kind of a clear top 2 in Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs. And then there's a bit of a tier break down to Achane and Barkley. I mean, Achane's workload is elite. Certainly not questioning that, but I just feel like this is a pretty bad spot on the road at Cleveland. Cleveland games have not been very shootout friendly. This game has a 39-point total, sub 40-point total. So I still think Achane's the 1-3, but more just pointing out that I think there's a pretty big tier gap here. And I think the other big kind of story for drafting early right now, on a Thursday afternoon, is we have a lot of these injury situations that are kind of interesting. CeeDee Lamb, there were 2 almost kind of conflicting reports on CeeDee Lamb. Jerry Jones was like, 2 thumbs up, brother, he's playing. And then Ian Rappaport was like, maybe he has a chance to play. If CeeDee Lamb goes, he's undervalued here at 10.2. He would be a top, 3 or 4 pick if he's ruled in. We also have Terry McLaurin, who might be back this week, and Quentin Johnston is the other Q tag I'm closely watching. I don't love Barkley. It's been hard to envision his ceiling this year. He hasn't cleared 20 points yet, but I don't know if there's a ton else to do right here in this specific draft other than take Barkley. It is kind of an interesting spot there. I think you could pull up Jefferson, you could pull up Lamb, but ultimately, I think I'm going to be mixing up kind of what I do here after those top 3 are off the board. All right, we are back on the clock. Rashee Rice, CeeDee Lamb, Rome Odunze. I think for my early drafts, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep taking CeeDee Lamb because I think CeeDee Lamb is going to close on Sunday as the 1-5. I think once he's ruled in, which I am anticipating, just kind of reading the tea leaves here, I think he's going to go, right next to Jefferson and regularly be a first-round pick. I think he'll also flip George Pickens in this scenario. So I'm just going to grab as much CD as I can right now in the second round, and that's how I'm going to personally approach my my early drafts. Big Dan talking about secondary team correlations, references Diggs Stevenson if we think Vrabel is going to run it up on the Titans. I like this call. I've been thinking about Ramondre a good bit under this same thought process. I think he's going to get all the work he can handle. The issue, of course, is he's just been horrible and really inefficient. But Tennessee, and we can go look at the running boost that they give to opposing running backs, looking at our DVP tool here. I believe they're second biggest boost to opposing backs fields here. Let me see. That was rush yards boost. If I just look at fantasy boost, yeah, their second biggest fantasy boost, the Titans defense to opposing running backs. So I really like the Ramondre call. And man, I don't I don't know if this is a team where I'd be willing to do May and Ramondre, but I do think that's the cleanest way to capture every single point that the Patriots score on Sunday. All right, we are back on the clock. Let's go ahead. Let's have some fun here. Let's play a mini correlation in this game. Let's grab Deebo Samuel. I think, Deebo is going to project well whether Terry McLaurin plays or not, just being in this game environment with such a massive total. And if Dak comes back, we can do kind of the chalk thing and take Dak in this game environment. But if Dak goes, it's certainly not the end of the world. We can figure out a secondary stack or a naked quarterback here. Breece Hall is another guy I think is a little undervalued right now relative to his workload. Dak Prescott does go. I think we're going to play this through Deebo and CD. So we're not going to grab Krosky Merritt here. Let's go ahead. What do we want to do? I think we can let's grab Tucker Kraft. I think Tucker Kraft for me is the tight end 2 on this slate. Tight end 3. It's definitely Trey McBride and Tyler Warren, but I think I have Tucker Kraft ahead of Ferguson. I like Ferguson, but he's so volume dependent, and CD being back really, I think, caps. I don't know if I want to say caps his ceiling because he can always score 2 touchdowns, but I think it hurts his floor for sure. And I think this ADP is kind of middling whether CD plays or not. I think once CD's ruled in, you'll see Jake Ferguson start to slip a little bit, and Tucker Kraft will be thrust into that number 3. And specifically on a team where I have CD Lamb, I don't really want to play Jake Ferguson with CD Lamb without Dak. Let's go ahead and do naked Drake May here. Talking through this with Big Dan, I think you want a piece of this offense because I don't think they're going to let off the gas on the Titans. But Drake May's really the one piece that feels comfy here because we know he can spread the ball out. Sure, Kayshon Boutte would have been a great piece to have last week, but he was really hard to click in the 6-person drafts. It was just pretty thin from a projection standpoint. But Drake May can easily, vacuum up all of the production here for the Patriots. So with this last pick, because we haven't done anything too out of the ordinary from an ADP perspective, I'd like to scroll a little bit here. I don't think I'd use Mason in the same game as Barkley. So I think I'm looking at like Vidal, Dobbins, or Pacheco. We talked about liking Pacheco a little bit here. Let's go ahead and grab him. And I also want to show just kind of his utilization over the past few weeks, because it has been pretty stark how much he is gaining on Kareem Hunt from a workload perspective. The fly in the ointment, of course, is they still like Kareem Hunt around the goal line. So even though his snaps and his rush attempts are going way up right now, it is a little tricky. We're going to need him to score to be in a winning BR lineup for sure. But you see here this trend line, 37%, 62%, 77% for the snaps. His rush attempts since week 4 have gone up 27, 41, 60%. Utilization score spiked 52, 58, 67. So I think there is some reason for optimism here. And then you look at the total, right? They're implied to score almost 30 points. And so I think the Chiefs here, and I wrote about this in my piece, and I'm not sure if it's up yet on Fantasy Life. Let me see if my week 7 strategy piece is up yet. I filed that this morning. Doesn't look like it's up yet, but I was talking about Chiefs leverage pieces because you're going to have one really popular angle for the Chiefs this week, and it's going to be Patrick Mahomes with Rashee Rice and then some Patrick Mahomes with Travis Kelce. I think that's going to be people's preferred way to play things. I think with either Pacheco or Xavier Worthy, there's a lot of nice leverage on those chalkier pieces. And just looking at the current Chiefs ADP, these guys are going to be drafted, less than 30% of the time. And Pacheco even less than that based on his ADP. But you can kind of see here, if we just, look at the past 3 weeks here, weeks 4, 5, and 6, you can see he's really starting to separate from Kareem Hunt here. And I'm using the Fantasy Life comparison tool, which is just a nice way to look at this. And you can see utilization score. We can look at snaps, and you can see all these different trend lines here. And it's just Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt moving in completely opposite directions. The one spot here, as I filter to inside the 5 rushing attempts, that's the one where Kareem Hunt still has a big lead there. Draft board saying, is Swift undervalued? Good question. So DeAndre Swift coming off that big game on Monday night, scores 24.5 points, 14 rush attempts, 108 yards, 2 receptions for 67 yards, and the touchdown. I do think he's undervalued this week. I think I agree with you. One, the matchup is nice. I really like this game environment. I would say after Dallas and Commanders, I would say the Saints and Bears is like my favorite game from like a sneaky shootout appeal. And there's just not a lot of other ways to play the Bears outside of Rome and Caleb. So yeah, I like Swift. I think he's a good, I wouldn't call him a scroll. I think with an ADP of 33.2, that'll put him at, maybe 40% ownership, which isn't bad. Like, it's nice to have a guy who won't be drafted in every contest. So I like that shout from you. He's just a guy that the field often has a hard time getting excited about, but he's had a pretty good role here. And before we spin the wheel again, let's go ahead and just look at this Bears backfield. I know it was the first game back for Kyle Monangai in a little while too, so I'm kind of curious exactly how that shook out. But yeah, 76 utilization score for DeAndre Swift, which is actually down from week 4 before the bye. It was really in the receiving game that he got the damage done in week 6. But you do see Monangai come out here after the bye and get 31% of the snaps, 20% of the rush attempts there. Roschon Johnson barely involved at all. So the fact that it's only a 2-man backfield here, and the fact that Monangai is still kind of getting ramped up, I do really think Swift is a nice play this week. Why don't we spin the wheel and we'll mix it up. If you guys are just tuning in, if you have any ideas for types of builds or, I don't know, quirky challenges here. Here's a fun one. Quarterback in the first 2 weeks. So kind of ADP for this week. We have, let me go to the main slate. Jaden Daniels would be the primary target, and if not, Patrick Mahomes. Jaden Daniels has an ADP of 9.8. Beginning of the second round, Patrick Mahomes, ADP of 14.1. One other thing I mentioned in the column that'll go up later today on Fantasy Life to be careful about with the Rashee Rice and the Patrick Mahomes is their ADPs. Not only are they a popular stack just because people want to target Rice and Mahomes, but their ADPs perfectly line up. You see here, you take Rashee Rice at 8.1, which is an early second round pick. And then Patrick Mahomes has an ADP of 14.1, which is at the end of the third round. So it's just going to be so common to see the Rashee Rice drafter take him and then come back and grab Patrick Mahomes in the third round. So that's just a combo I really want to be careful with because I think we're just going to see it on a ton of teams. And speaking of being able to see combos on a ton of teams, I got to give a shout out to Patrick Donovan. He runs the site bbmdb.app, and he just recently added support for Battle Royale. And you can go and look at these different combinations. And I think looking back at these can be really helpful to get a feel for how often different types of players are paired. So let me give you an example just to show, like Dak Prescott and George Pickens, right? Those guys were drafted in basically every contest last week. Actually, let me do a better one. Let me do I'm trying to think who else was a top quarterback. Last week was like a weird slate. I do think Dak and Dak and Pickens is a good one just to show you how often they're paired together. So last week there were 2,700 teams. 2,705 teams that had Dak and George Pickens. Now let's look at JSN and Sam Darnold. So Jackson Smith and Jigba, of course, taken in every draft, but Sam Darnold wasn't. Sam Darnold was a scroll. Look at how few teams there are comparatively. Less than half less than half of them. So 1,230 teams there. So just by scrolling down to a quarterback who isn't always drafted, you're essentially cutting the ownership in half. So that's just something to be conscious of. And, I think this week, another example would be you're going to probably see a lot of Diggs in May together. And I'm pretty sure we saw a lot of that last week as well. Stephon Diggs, Drake May on 2,645 teams. One that wouldn't have been as popular would have been Ted Arroyo, who was going in every draft, but with Bryce Young, who wasn't. So then you do that, all of a sudden you get it down to only 975 teams had that. And so you start to think through, this contest has, 50,000 plus entries. Say that the winning stack is Bryce Young to Ted Arroyo McMillan. Now all of a sudden you're only competing against 970 teams instead of almost 3,000 teams like you are in the Pickens and Dak instance. So I like to think through some of those things from an ownership perspective, and it kind of helps visualize how many teams you're actually competing against when these hit. All right. So with that said, we are going to do a early round quarterback build. I'm thinking, if you're trying to get the most value on this, Jaden Daniels, ADP 9.8. Okay, so this could be a little tricky, right? Because I pick 101 here. So if Jaden Daniels doesn't come back to pick 12, which he probably won't, then I'm looking at Mahomes. Mahomes at the end of the second round would be fine for this prompt. If Mahomes also goes, then I'm having to reach up for Dak, which isn't the end of the world, but not ideal to spend a second round pick on a guy with an ADP of 20.7. But the one benefit you do get from that is you see Dak's ADP at 20 puts him on the right side of the board over here. So he's mainly going to be paired up with players with an ADP of 8, 7, 17, 18. If you do take Dak at pick 13, there probably will be less combos of the 12 pick, whoever you take at 12, assuming they're anchored to ADP. So we call that flipping the board. It's not something that I go out of my way to do a ton if I feel like I'm sacrificing a lot of value or projection, but I don't think it is the worst idea to have some of those in your portfolio. With the 101, we'll go ahead and just take Jonathan Taylor. I've done like 10 drafts so far, and that is my first Jonathan Taylor share. I don't think I've had a 101 or 102 yet. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get as much Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs as I can. And then we'll see what comes back to us here, knowing that we are going to be taking a quarterback in the second round here. What are some of your guys' favorite angles for week 7 drafts? I would say from like a macro perspective, quarterback is really deep this week. I mean, you can see going all the way down to Daniel Jones, Fields, Love, Nix, Dart. That's like a really strong range as far as guys that have pretty good upside with low ownership. Running back's a little tricky, but there are some of these names to like, from the Jordan Mason, Kamani Vidal, Dobbins range. And I'm kind of highlighting, these late round guys. Wide receivers pretty deep. As usual here, the Q tags certainly make it interesting with McLaurin, QJ, and Lamb. And then tight end, kind of a clear top 3 for me. And then some pretty interesting options. Zach Ertz in that high scoring game, Harold Fannin potentially without David Njoku, Darren Waller and Mason Taylor are, both have pretty good roles, and Michael Mayer as well. So I think a pretty strong week as far as a lot of different avenues to go. But from a game environment perspective, there's not a lot of really sexy games. It's Commanders and Cowboys head and shoulders above the rest. And then for me, Chicago and the Saints, and then maybe next to it would be Chargers and Colts. Let's see here. Can I get Jaden Daniels? I can't get Jaden Daniels. That's fine. We will do Patrick Mahomes, and we'll also grab the George Pickens slide here. In general, I think like I said, I want to be more taking CeeDee Lamb right now and letting Pickens fall. But in this instance, Pickens falls. So I'll go ahead and grab Pickens here and then Mahomes. And then we can do something with one of those other kind of leverage pieces that we like here. Probably Worthy, but Kelsey, of course, in play as well. Just saw an interesting thing on my timeline that Dolphins-Browns game in Cleveland could have 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts. The National Weather Service says this is certainly a system worth keeping an eye on as a strong storm may materialize. The current forecast, 94% chance of rain, 36 mile per hour gusts, and 65 degrees. So once you're up over the 25 to 30 degrees for wind gusts, that's when it legitimately can lower fantasy production. So that will be one to keep tabs on. I'm a little hesitant to, make big sweeping decisions about predicting wind, 3 days out or whatever. I'll want to, check in closer, but that is notable. The thing is like no one wants to play Tua. No one wants to play Dylan Gabriel. I guess you're playing some Waddle. You're playing some Harold Fannin, but there's not even a ton of passing game pieces there to dock. It's not like this is Cowboys Commanders and now we're like, oh crap, how do we approach this weather situation? Pat says Mason Taylor, tight end scroll, hard to beat the Panthers on the ground. He's one of the only pass catching options this week. Yeah, I like that call. Yeah, I would say down here, Taylor and Mayer both kind of stand out to me with these low ADPs. GM, what's up, Jordan? Jordan has been a guest on my Battle Royale Bash show that I do on Thursday afternoons on my channel. If you guys are YouTube members, you put hashtag in the chat, join the Bash. I spin the wheel. If your name comes up, you hop on. I pay for the entry, and we split the winnings if we do well. All right, we are back on the clock. I'm just going to go ahead and grab Xavier Worthy now because I want to have. I think you can do naked Mahomes. I don't think that's bad, but I do like getting Mahomes with Worthy. And then let's see how we want to play this. We're going to do one more running back and one more tight end. Let's go with Draft Board's call here and play DeAndre Swift. Scroll just a little bit there for DeAndre Swift. So now we have Jonathan Taylor at the 101. George Pickens slides. I guess I did technically say that I needed to take a quarterback in round 2. And I technically took him in round 3. I should have taken Mahomes and then Pickens. So you can get me on that technicality there. And then we come back, grab Xavier Worthy for the stack, and then grab DeAndre Swift as our RB2. And now we'll be looking for a tight end here to round things out. Steven says, in high winds, would a tight end better like Fan and be okay to take? Yeah, that's the kind of thing. I don't, unless these are like truly insane winds, which I mean, 50 to 60 mile per hour gusts is pretty insane. But Harold Fannin doesn't have a huge ADOT. I mean, let me go ahead and check that and make sure I'm not just making that up. But in my head, he doesn't. Yeah, 6.1 ADOT. That's an incredibly low ADOT. You can see Njoku's 6.6. We could look at other pass catchers on the team. Judy has an ADOT of 13. So with that low of an ADOT, the passes are already close to the line of scrimmage. Shouldn't be as impacted by wind there. All right, let's figure out what we want to do for our tight end selection. Travis Kelce is falling, but I'm not going to take him. I want to go with a skinny stack with Mahomes. I don't think it's bad to double stack Mahomes. Let me see. Let me think this through. Is this a spot where I'd want to double stack Mahomes? They do have a massive total. A lot of the Travis Kelce stacks are going to be with Rashee Rice. A lot of the Travis Kelce is going to be with Rashee Rice. I don't think it's bad, but I still think if Kelsey's having a ceiling game, it probably makes it less likely that Xavier Worthy is here. I'm going to go ahead and do Zach Ertz opposite George Pickens here. This is one of those moments that happens in a lot of Battle Royale drafts where even though I know overall that the double stacks can really cap your ceiling, it's still really hard to avoid it when it's there staring you in the face. So you guys just got to watch me there for 15 seconds, wrestle with this idea of how pretty a Patrick Mahomes double stack would look. But instead, I wanted to grab a piece with a lower ADP that I don't think actually projects that differently. Let's go look at our Fantasy Life projections and actually see what we have for these tight ends right now and see if we can confirm what Jordan is saying as well. Feels like a flat tight end week with 10 viable, and there will be one random spike. So you can see here, I'm going to go to our FanDuel scoring, which is going to be the same half point PPR as underdog. You can see here, Harold Fannin, tight end 5 by our projections here. Kelsey, 8.9 projection, and Zach Ertz, 8.1. So fairly close there. I ended up just kind of breaking the tie away from the double stack. But to Jordan's point, you can see these tier breaks that we were talking about. Trey McBride and Tyler Warren in a tier of their own, 11.4. I guess you can't. There you go. Now you can see it without my video box covering it. 11.4 and 11.2. Then you have Ferguson and Kraft in their own tier. And I do expect this Ferguson projection to come down a little bit if CeeDee Lamb's rolled in. And then look at how long this tier is of the 9.3 guys, from Harold Fannin all the way down to Michael Mayer. These guys just separated by a couple of points here. This is a good point by Rob, and another reason not to love double stacking Rice and Kelsey for sure. I think Worthy, though, is different, and you get the double bonus. You don't get the skill set overlap if you do a Kelsey and Xavier Worthy, like Rob's talking about, and you get a slight ownership discount, right? Where Travis Kelsey and Worthy are going to be probably more around the 50 to 60% owned range. Travis Kelsey will probably be a little higher than that, but Worthy probably around 50%. Whereas if you do Rice and Kelsey, that combo is going to be way more rostered. I will say, though, this is why I do like thinking through my strategies for small field contests. And even though I passed on a Mahomes, Kelsey, Worthy there, if I were playing in one of these smaller contests, say this Engage 8 here that has 4,500 entrants, that would be a spot where I think I would have absolutely clicked Kelsey as part of the double stack, because I'm just competing against, 90% less rosters in this contest than I am in the big battle royale. And you just don't need as high of a ceiling there. All right, if you guys have any other ideas to add to the wheel, go ahead and let me know. We got a few on here that I'll keep doing, and we'll see what we end up with. This was the one I wanted to get on there today and make sure we got, so I'm glad this popped up. But this is going to be take the top ADP value in the first 3 rounds. So that means I am not going to be making any decisions. In fact, to demonstrate this, I will push the plane through 3 rounds. I will let God take the wheel, and then I will try to make the best possible team in rounds 4, 5, and 6 based on what were the top ADP values. This is an exercise I've done previously with season-long best ball that I really like. It's a good way to kind of, one, scoop up ADP values, but also diversify your portfolio. There's always a tendency to click the same players over and over again that you like. And by just taking the top ADP value, you'll get some natural diversification of what the room is giving to you, as opposed to always saying, hey, I know better, and this is going to be who I pick here. Steven getting creative here. 2 players whose uniform is blue in rounds 5 and 6 on different teams in different positions. All right, we'll throw this on here. Go blue. Last 2 picks. All right. All right, we got the 101 again here. Like I said, I'm letting ADP take the wheel. I push the plane, which means I'm going to get Jonathan Taylor here. Hopefully we don't end up with the exact same start that we had last draft, which was Jonathan Taylor, Pickens, and Mahomes. But in that case, Pickens was a faller and Mahomes I reached for, so I doubt we will get that same pairing here with Jonathan Taylor. The only way I wouldn't want to do this is with 2 tight ends. I wouldn't want to take both Trey McBride and Tyler Warren on the same team, but based on the ADP, that is not a concern. I should also mention, if you guys are on mobile or on desktop, you can actually go in and set your positional limits. So say you are auto drafting, you can go in and set it to a maximum of 1 tight end. The only thing that's frustrating about this screen here is, and I realize you can't see it. Let me just drop my box down here for a quick second so you can see this. It resets every week, which is kind of annoying. But I'm going to go ahead because I never want to take more than 1 tight end. You're obviously capped at 1 quarterback. You're obviously capped at 2 running backs. So I'm going to set this to 1, 2, 3, 1. And so if I was doing auto drafts or doing this bit where I want to take the top ADP values and don't want to get 2 tight ends, I can just go ahead and set my positional limits there. So let's see what we're going to get here from the ADP gods after these round 2 and round 3 picks are made for me. I will go ahead and turn it off, and then we'll try to just draft the best possible team based on what we've already done. All right, Daniels goes. So we get Pickens again and Javonte Williams. Okay, so here we go. This is back to our earlier conversation. This actually fulfills the secondary team stack and the conversation we were having about what teams you'd be willing to have a secondary team stack from. And I'm certainly content having 2 Cowboys here, George Pickens, Javonte Williams. Obviously, I like this pairing a lot more if CD doesn't go because I want the concentration with Pickens and Williams. But with a 26-point team total at home here, I really like having a couple pieces from the Cowboys. So I do not mind this for this specific build. And if we look at the ADP, because Pickens ADP is at 12 or 8.8 and Javante's at 12.9, you're probably not going to have quite as many Javonte Williams and George Pickens pairings together. Just because normally the Pickens won't fall far enough to line up with Javonte Williams ADP. So Dak Prescott's already off the board. Jaden Daniels already off the board. I think on this build, I'm not going to play a bring back. I'm going to just play this as the Cowboys are heavily concentrated on Javonte and Pickens. And so then that leaves quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end for us here. We did naked Drake May before. We haven't really done a quarterback scroll yet. Let's do naked Jalen Hurts this time. I am having a hard time passing on Kraft here. But we've already done a Kraft. We could get a scroll tight end to finish and maybe get another wide receiver here first. We already talked about that game. I'm going to sit on Waddle. Don't love it for Ted Arroyo. Don't mind Diggs, but don't love it. I'm going to do naked Hurts, so no AJ Brown. We just did Worthy. Let's play the Quentin Johnston Q tag on this one. So they do play opposite Jonathan Taylor. I think if Quentin Johnston goes, he's going to project very well. His ADP should shoot up. And if he doesn't play, I can get a swap to another wide receiver who I like here. And now we can do a second tight end here, a first tight end scroll. Rob says I'm going to have to go back in and change my settings to 2 tight ends next week for National Tight End Week. Yeah, I heard Ian saying he wants George Kittle to wait to come back because it'll be more fitting for George Kittle to return in week 8 for National Tight End Week, which would be very fitting, but I would like George Kittle back this week. Gadsden scroll. I don't think Gadsden's an awful scroll, but there's kind of 2 things that I would be looking for there. One, I wouldn't want to do it on the Quentin Johnston team because I think what makes Quentin Johnston attractive Gadsden attractive if Quentin Johnston is out. That's where he then kind of really gets the boost. Let's go ahead with the with Pat's earlier selection. Pat liked the Mason Taylor scroll here. Let's go ahead and grab him on this team. Could be the only show in town for the Jets passing game here. I want to see what his utilization looked like last week, even in that kind of atrocious game. He obviously came out of the bye and was a big part of their offense there. I just want to see what it was last week. So yeah, continued to see his involvement boost up from a routes perspective. Obviously the targets cratered. That was more about the overall game environment, but seeing his routes, week 3, 70%, week 4, 74%, week 5, 83, week 6, 86% there. So yeah, I think if there's a guy who could do, what was it, week 4, when Hunter Henry was the tight end scroll you need, when he had 2 touchdowns and just kind of consolidated all the work on the Patriots, I think you could certainly see, Mason Taylor do something like that. So this final team ends up being Jalen Hurts, Jonathan Taylor, Javonte Williams, George Pickens, Quentin Johnston, Mason Taylor. We had to take the top 3 values and then make the best possible team from there. All right, let's spin the wheel again here. Here is an update for the Jets. I just see on my timeline, no sign of Garrett Wilson. Josh Reynolds' hip is participating in the early portion. I really doubt that Garrett Wilson plays this week. All right, this is going to be Stevens. 2 players whose uniform is blue in rounds 5 and 6. Let's see here. Rounds 5 and 6. Are we counting Steven? So are we like the Chargers? Like if they have powder blue, we're going to count that. The Titans have a little bit of blue. We're going to count that. Obviously the Colts, the Cowboys. So the Eagles wouldn't qualify. The Vikings wouldn't qualify. The Browns certainly wouldn't qualify. What about the Dolphins? Are we saying blue, or is that more, what is it, aqua? I think a Herbert stack would be a good way to close it out. Okay, all right. Steven's giving me a long leash on this prompt. I appreciate it. We got the 1-6 here. I'm going to find out when my week 7 column is going up on Fantasy Life, so you guys can check that out. I have more thoughts about this slate there. If you guys are tuning in to the Fantasy Life YouTube channel for the first time and haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. There's all kinds of good videos on here throughout the week. I just got done listening to a little week 7 preview pod with Ian Hartitz and Matthew Friedman going game by game there. That was where Friedman was talking up Ramondre a good bit on that podcast. So my ears perked up there. Ramondre would qualify for this prompt. Some blue there for the Patriots. There's actually a decent amount of blue teams now that I think about it. So thank you for that. Maybe we do a wide receiver start. I feel like we've been running back heavy through most of these drafts. Jefferson goes. But yeah, let's loosen it up and do a wide receiver start. We'll do Rashee Rice and Rome Odunze. Do a little bit of ignoring ADP, passing on Barkley. Judkins is an interesting one. Judkins projects very well. It's a good matchup. Or I shouldn't say projects very well. Sorry. He has an incredible matchup. We know the Dolphins are just getting destroyed by everybody. They got destroyed by Rico Dowdle. They started his, Hall of Fame campaign. Then they get destroyed by Kamani Vidal. So they have been giving it up to everyone. And Judkins, of course, in a really good spot. If it's windy, he's going to get as many carries as he can handle. But you can see here in our projections, he doesn't project as well as you would think. Ashton Genty projecting for more. Obviously, Barkley, Breece Hall projecting for more. Javonte Williams projecting for more. So you could certainly say that he is overvalued ADP-wise here. And yet, I'm not going to full fade Quinshon Judkins. Anytime you have a rookie who's playing as well as he is, and you get this kind of matchup, it's hard to ignore. But I think it's just an interesting conversation from a projection standpoint. You can see here, you start to see what kind of combos of players might be duplicated a lot of the time. And looking at who gets paired with the 101 a disproportionate amount of the time just because of ADP is something to be cognizant of. And you see here, Javonte Williams, George Pickens. This is the exact start I just did last draft because I did it strictly by ADP. And again, it's not to say it's bad to have some Jonathan Taylor with Javonte Williams and George Pickens, but it's good to know, hey, this might be popping up more in the field than it should. Because yes, there's some light correlation with Javonte and Pickens, but otherwise there's no correlation between Jonathan Taylor and Javonte Williams. But a lot of Jonathan Taylor teams are going to be paired with Javonte, just anecdotally from these drafts we've seen and from knowing that their ADPs are correlated in that way. You can already see Breece Hall's pushing up a little bit. He went at 9 here. So this will be a team I can get an elite tight end. Trey McBride grows. So we'll grab Tyler Warren here. And we haven't gotten Bill yet. The question is, can we fulfill this prompt? I think I have two players. The Chicago Bears are blue, right? Yeah, we're good there on blue. So this is what we're going to do. I have the idea of how I want to finish this team. I think what I want to do in a perfect world is Caleb Williams stacked with Rome Odunze. And I kind of want to do our scroll to Ramondre that we've been talking about. Another blue here. So I think this is how we can fulfill our prompt here and make a team that makes sense. It will be interesting to see how the Panthers handle this split with Chuba. And Rico Dowdle's like a really interesting use case in battle royales right now. And you can see from our projections, he's not projecting incredibly. Where do we have him? Rico, wow, we have him all the way down at 15. So this is clearly anticipating a Chuba split. I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. You know, he's been going here at RB 15, around pick 15 in these drafts. I mean, we have him behind guys like DeAndre Swift, Jordan Mason, Dobbins, Scatabo, Kamara. That's an interesting one. I still think he should be a top 10 running back on this slate from a projection standpoint, even if you concede that Chuba is going to get some work. I just don't know how you don't give Rico Dowdle 75% of the touches. He's just been too good. Like, it's like if he stumbles, if he looks rough out there, then you have your permission to start using Chuba more. But this is like the ultimate hot hand situation of just keep giving Rico the ball, right? All right, so let's see here. I like how this is. I'm going to be able to get Caleb because no one has taken or already has taken a quarterback in front of me. And then I should be able to get Ramondre because I don't think he's going to be selected here. So this is I like doing this, a scroll at running back on a team like this. Again, this team, nothing unique really by ADP. I guess Rashee Rice with Rome paired together is not too bad because their ADPs don't directly line up. So maybe that's unique. But Caleb with Rome will be popular when Rome is stacked. It will obviously be, when Caleb is stacked, it will be with Rome. So then I want to do something unique on this team. And And I think scrolling here, getting a guy we've been talking about who we think could have a pretty nice role in Ramondre Stevenson is a nice way to play that. So this final team with the blue theme, hat tip to Steven for this idea, ends up being Caleb Williams, Bill, Ramondre, Rashee Rice, Rome Odunze, and Tyler Warren here. And of course, our final two blue players here, Caleb Williams and Ramondre Stevenson. Ertz again. I had already taken Tyler Warren on this team, but I do like Ertz. Let's do another draft here. All right, RB start. Let's do another one because I feel like we've done a ton of RB starts. So I'm gonna nah wave that one. I guess we only have a few other prompts here. If you guys are watching this after the fact and you ever have any ideas to put in the wheel, leave them in the comments down below. Here's a good one. We have not really done too much late round tight end stuff. So this is a QB tight end last two rounds. Doesn't necessarily have to be stacked, but our last two selections will need to be quarterback and tight end. So I will gray out quarterback and tight end here to start. All right, we got the 1-6, 1-7 again. And we know our final two selections are going to be quarterback, tight end. I will say, I think there are multiple quarterbacks down here who you can do without stacking partners this week. I think Daniel Jones, you can certainly do by himself, or as we like to say in the biz, naked. Justin Fields, it does not feel good whatsoever without Garrett Wilson, but I do think you could do him naked. Jordan Love, I think, is a particularly good naked quarterback this week. When you look at our projections, he projects very well. Top 8 quarterback on the slate, and yet his positional rank on Underdog right now is QB 10. So, 2 spots of value there relative to his projection. And because he spreads the ball around so much, even with the kind of Matthew Golden quasi breakout last week, his routes were still not up in that full-time role. Kraft, you can obviously stack Love with, but I think playing Love through a spread out passing attack is really interesting. Bo Nix, you can always play spread out. You can, of course, stack him with Sutton, but knowing that Franklin will get involved, the tight ends get involved there, I think you can spread it out. And then Jackson Dart, too. I mean, all of these guys have rushing upside, don't have to be paired with a pass catcher necessarily, and are going to be low owned because these are all after an ADP of 35. Let's see if we can get a different start from the 6-7. Last draft, we did Rashee and Rome Odunze. Rashee Rice goes at 1-4 here, so we don't have to worry about that. We haven't taken Judkins yet on a team. Why don't we do, because we're going to go quarterback tight end the last 2 rounds. Why don't we go double running back here and go Barkley, Judkins? So we'll technically fulfill both prompts. I nah-waved the one prompt that was RB, so we could get QB tight end to finish, and we still end up going running back. Rob says, I know we can't hear it, but tell me you have the wolf howl set as the sound for the wheel winner. You know what? I don't have my headphones on, and I don't think I have a sound set. And I will admit, I didn't even know. I think I've always just had the default clapping here, but apparently I need to get into the settings here. What is this? Is it in customize here? Let's see, volume, after spin. Where's this? Oh, here you go. Is this it? All right. See, I didn't even know about this. Should I get this going? Subdued applause is what I have here. Where's the wolf howl? Look at all these options. My goodness. All right. There you go. Oh, so the reason why is when I do my screen share in StreamYard, they don't play the sound unless you share a specific Chrome tab. I'm sharing my full window, so it won't play the sound, but that's why. But Rob, thank you for pointing out to me that I can have a wolf howl as part of my wheel. Maybe as a send-off after this draft, we will go and spin the wheel once more just so we can hear the wolf howl. I'm always tentative when I say the word wolf because my wife has correctly pointed out to me over the years that I have a tendency to say woof. I forget to include the L. Like I used to be like Timberwolves, wolves, wolf. So I have to be very careful and enunciate the L. The wolf howl. All right, we're going to go wide receiver here, right? Because we know that we want to go quarterback, tight end to finish. I think Ladd is a good pick. I'm a little worried. I prefer QJ, I think, if QJ does go, but Ladd, I think, is still in a really nice spot here against the Colts. So we can go Ladd. And then if we're going to be kind of going unique with our last two here, why don't we do the Diggs thing? We don't need to go Drake May with him. We could, but I do think that's going to be fairly popular. I'm curious where our projections have Diggs on this slate. Yeah, we have him as the wide receiver 9. And what is his positional on Underdog? Yeah, the wide receiver 11. So a little bit of value there. You can see here in our projections, we have Quentin Johnston as the wide receiver 4. Obviously, this is assuming he's in, but it just shows how strongly he's going to project if he plays. And that's why I'm a little worried about Ladd, who comes in here at the QB 11. And his ADP right now is the wide receiver 7. So it is, you are paying a premium. And that's, again, it's kind of like the Judkins spot where you're like, okay, this ADP is a little expensive, but the opportunity cost of what you're passing on isn't huge. So you're mostly kind of splitting hairs with those things. I just think it's kind of interesting to see, the field is making the assumption that QJ isn't going. Like clearly, he has an ADP of 34.7. I think if you have one takeaway from this stream, it's to draft a lot of QJ right now because either he's going to shoot up in ADP or he's just going to be the best click on the board because he has an ADP at 34.7 and is playing and projects really well. All right, let's figure out what do we want to do for our quarterback tight end. I kind of like the Daniel Jones because we play him opposite Ladd McConkey. We say, hey, this game has a little bit of juice. Daniel Jones spreads the ball around, rushes it in for a touchdown. I think Pittman is kind of interesting. Obviously, I'm not doing a wide receiver here, but Josh Downs is in the concussion protocol. So Pittman could end up being a pretty nice stacking partner there. 35.8. Alec Pierce always can get loose for a deep ball as well. What tight end should we do here? We haven't taken Kelsey yet, and I think if we scroll here at quarterback, that this team is pretty unique. We could also take Ferguson. We could take Ferguson at this price. I mean, this is a pretty nice dip on Ferguson. And it does feel scary to just full fade the game that has a 55-point total. Why don't we do Jake Ferguson as the faller, and then we'll do Daniel Jones naked with the Ladd McConkey bring back. I kind of like how this team shook out. So we get the quarterback tight end prompt there at the end. Daniel Jones to Jake Ferguson there, our quarterback tight end. The running back start Barkley and Judkins, and then wide receivers Ladd and Stephon Diggs. All right. That is about going to do it for me, although I am going to do one wheel spin just so we can hear this howl. Wow. And they both wear blue. I am just fulfilling so many different prompts around here. The best part about that is how long the howl was. I kept waiting for it to end and it kept going. Thank you, Rob, for pointing that out to me there. I will make that a staple of future howls, or sorry, wheel spins there on the Fantasy Life draft party. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me draft, giving you some ideas for your drafts this coming weekend. Like I said, I do a few other Battle Royale themed shows here. And I just got news as well. My column is up on Fantasy Life previewing this slate. So let me go ahead, share my screen here. I will drop this in the chat. I can tell you the agenda for this article. I look at what the winner did last week, who took down the first place prize for $50,000. I talk about how to attack the game of the week, Commanders in Dallas. I talk about my favorite quarterback options in this deep quarterback pool. And then I talk about those Chiefs leverage angles there. And we kind of hit on some of those with the Pacheco and Xavier Worthy stuff. So check out that article up on Fantasy Life, Week 7 Underdog Battle Royale DFS picks. And appreciate all of you guys hanging out. Like I said, if you want to see some more Battle Royale drafting, 3 p.m. Eastern on my YouTube channel, Peter Overzet YouTube channel, I'm going to do the Battle Royale Bash, where people from the audience hop on stage and draft teams with me. And then Friday, I do a full comprehensive preview of the Week 7 slate on Underdog with John Warner and Nez from the Badge Bros. Really fun show Friday afternoons. That's called Off and On the Clock. Appreciate all of you guys. Make sure you're subscribed to the Fantasy Life newsletter, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll see you guys next time for the draft.